On air.
On air. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. This is a workshop between the select board and the planning board. It's an informal one, so we're not going to have any, really formal votes or anything. It's all kind of back and forth. There will be no public input. This is not a this is a workshop for us. There will be no public input, no back and forth. The original initiative was, a call for a moratorium on solar farms, but there's also been calls for moratoriums on cannabis establishments and subdivisions. And I figured if we're going to be talking about moratoriums, we'll talk about moratoriums. First off, I want to thank the planning board and the staff who have been dealing with these issues. I know you guys have put a lot of long hours in, done a lot of research, had a lot of grief. Welcome to the club. I also want to express my confidence in code enforcement in planning and doing their jobs, and following the rules and regulations in our land use ordinances. One of the things I think we need to be clear about is the difference between ordinances and policies. Policies are things that the selectmen can implement, as far as running the town in the business way. Ordinances are something that has to be passed by the legislative body, and that would be the voters in the town. An ordinance would include anything doing with land ordinances, so that would include a moratorium. They talk about how other towns have passed moratoriums. I've done a little bit of research into that myself, and this has all come with people proposing them, and the moratoriums being put forward, and almost all of them are not retroactive. South Berwick does have a retroactivity clause in theirs. South Berwick runs off a town charter. They have a town council. And by being a town council, they have a lot more leeway than a select board does. They can do things unilaterally like that, and do things. They have to go before the voters eventually, but they can do the moratoriums unilaterally.
So that's telling us, Tom, that once we, as selectmen, we can't put a moratorium on anything. It has to be passed by the voters of town. As long as everyone understands that, we just can't do it.
As far as the retroactivity, is the paperwork that Steve Clement's attorney gave to us at our last meeting has a couple different things in there about retroactivity. And one of the things that it comes out of that from my reading is that the finding by the court is by a business court, for one thing, and the judge finds that retroactivity has not been addressed by Superior Law Court or the law court itself. And that makes a big difference as far as the town is concerned, because any lawsuits or anything that came out of a moratorium from one side or the end would probably end up in the law court or the Superior Court eventually. So, and then talking about retroactivity, anyways, is if we're talking about retroactivity for one project, the solar project, is if we're talking about moratoriums of other things, does that mean we want to talk about retroactivity for subdivisions or cannabis establishments? So we have to look at that and where that leads us down. So because there have been a lot of calls for moratoriums on subdivisions, and I'm not in favor of a moratorium for anything. I think that as a town body, the planning board, the town staff, we can work this out. We don't need a moratorium. We can figure this out and go forward from here. So those are just some things I brought up from looking at this, listening to your meetings, what came up at my meetings. So I'm opening it up to anybody else's ideas, questions. if you got answers, I'll be glad to have those.
I know we've discussed it in the past, and I think it would be of great value to the planning board is, and we gave ourselves some homework, and I want to see us follow through on it, is to come up with a checklist for future solar projects, just that way we're doing apples to apples, you know what I mean? And I've done some research on my own, I know other members of the board have done research, and it is a moving target, and I think it's unfair to the applicant where we have approved solar projects in the past, and as we learn more going forward, i.e. decommissioning costs, i.e. the hazmat involved, all of those pieces, that we're asking future applicants and holding them to the same standard. And it is a moving target, because I think we're all getting smarter on the process and on the industry. I think there'd be a lot of value having a checklist moving forward, and I think we should develop that quickly.
So, one of the things I heard, listening to, your meetings and things is that, there are a couple choke points, in the solar arrays coming into town. I guess is the transmission line, the substations, now getting to their capacity, so that, so can anybody inform me, did anybody have any more information on that they can inform me on?
Yeah,
We have brand new substations.
there's a CMP, part of their cluster study. It's based off of the megawatts, and it's possible that between the Soltage project and the one that was approved of Sophie's Way, that could take care of the capacity unless CMP updates it or if there's other infrastructure improvements.
I also want to add that Tammy, myself, and Mike sat down on a Monday morning, and we wrote a brand new solar ordinance for our town that we will be presenting to the planning board and the select board for the November vote, which will include the things you're looking for.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So is the proposed changes, drastic changes in any way, or, I mean?
Well, our land use ordinance just has screening for solar right now, so it is gonna feel drastic. But it's going to be right on with every other solar project we have in town currently.
It also addressed not just solar. We took the essential services definition, and all of the changes affect all of the items that are listed under essential services.
That's correct.
Why is solar considered essential service?
Because it's generating power. That goes a long way back when James and Lee J were reviewing essential services coming in, and when solar of all different types was being discussed throughout the country, and a lot of research had been done on it. So if you look at all the definitions under essential services, most of them are with the generation of power.
So any problems we're having with solar now, we're gonna look at the problems that are here, right? Like setbacks, things like that. Buffering, where it's supposed to be buffered, you can't see it. That's not being done. So it should be part of the code. It's not in the code at all anymore. No setbacks from property lines, right?
Yeah, so the new ordinance came in November, right, after the
Right.
236 one was already in place. So it's hard
No, I
to,
know that. I'm just saying, we gotta put it on the paper, have it done, so that we
Yeah.
can say, this is how it is.
Yeah, and.
so that's what we're doing.
Right, that's the design standards, the performance standards is what they're gonna be all under the essential services. They're all gonna be tied together right there, so you
Right.
don't have to flip back and forth to find, okay, this section has this and this section has this. They're all listed right there, right under essential services.
So right now, it's a one blurb thing in our land use ordinance. I believe our new one is 4 to 5 pages written out.
And we know it's gonna get cut. We know there are gonna be changes that need to be made based on what the planning board wants, what the board of selectmen want, what legal has to say. It's not, oh, it's etched in stone.
Yeah, I know.
Code never goes to stone. Code is always fluid. So when something comes up, we amend the ordinance to agree with what happens.
The town vote.
Yep.
I know what, oh, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, well, I think I'm taking a step back from this a little bit to, the minutia of, here's the list and here's what we want, and if we do it, let's do it this way. And that's fine, that's all well and good. But I think the broader question is, do we want it at all? I mean, when you take a look at Berwick now, where it was maybe 5 years ago to now, what are we known for? We're known for marijuana, solar panels, and storage units. And that's what we are. So is that what we want to be?
That's not what Berwick's known for.
It's, I live close to Route 4, and that's all Route 4 is. So, and I'm not saying that's it, but I just don't want to commit reputational suicide here. And I don't want us to be put in a box and say this is what they are. So I want to protect us. And I think, so, Tom, you had talked about, you're against moratoriums. I'm not. I think that we have enough solar. We haven't, and if there's currently something on the books that's already been applied for, we've got to look at it. Yes, we do. But I think that as we heard at the last planning board meeting, there were an awful lot of people.
You cannot discuss anything from any of the meetings because the applicants are technically not here.
Ideas that I got from the community were that it inhibits their quiet enjoyment of their property. And really, that's basically it. You buy a house, you put it up, and yes, you expect other houses to be built, but you don't expect a commercial enterprise to be there. That can be an eyesore. And that bothers me. The other thing that I find about solar that bothers me is everybody talks about, oh, it's so environmentally friendly. Well, how can it be when you're cutting down 75 acres of timber to put it in? So somebody needs to do the math for me that says that's 75 acres of timber, which is not throwing oxygen off into the air and eating up carbon dioxide, is better for us than what we have now. So I think there are a lot of problems with solar, and I think that another one is what's in it for us. Yes, we do get taxes, and I understand that, and I know
50%. So it's at 50% of what the appraised value is. That bothers me. Do I get 50% on what I owe for taxes? No. Why do they get a 50% knockoff on the taxes? That blows my mind, James, when I heard that.
That's how, with exemptions, it works. But with the Berwick Solar Project, that's $1 million of added value. That's $20,000 a year from that one solar farm. When you talk about Berwick's biggest problem, we have a high tax rate. We need to increase our tax base. Storage facilities, solar farms, and marijuana facilities are all in the, and also CMP's transportation lines are all in our top 10 of property tax payers. So yeah, we don't, everything's a trade-off. There's no free lunch. Everything we do is going to have an externality. And we're here today to figure out how we can mitigate those externalities.
Right.
That's why we're here.
So I guess my bottom line is, I'm on the moratorium side. I don't want to see any more of these. But having said that, if that's in the no-fly zone here, then fine. But let's put some real deep restrictions on this, because I don't want someone to wake up 6 months, a year later, looking out their backyard and say, isn't that a heck of a view now?
Just as a last follow-up, I'm supportive of I don't know if we use cap and moratorium interchangeably.
That's how I am.
A moratorium basically kicks the can down the road 6 months. a cap, you know, I think after the one-off Heritage is built, we have 4 and then we call it. I mean, I would strongly support that. 4 and we're good.
We already put a limit into the proposed ordinance,
Yeah,
so.
okay.
I just don't want us to be stuck in this quandary. I know we discussed that the CMP transfer stations are a limiting factor. I don't want us to rely on that, because if CMP goes back and they improve their infrastructure, that opens the floodgates again. So I think we, as a collective group, need to be very proactive in driving this train and not having it driven for us, i.e. CMP comes in, they improve their infrastructure, and now we're putting up, you know, how many more solar farms. So I just don't want to rely on the infrastructure piece. I think it needs to be policy driven.
Oh, yeah.
So I got something to say. Part of this has to deal with the comprehensive plan, the new one that's coming. I mean, we have to go by what those say, and we should also have some surveys through them to find out what the town really wants instead of just getting small batch. If we get a more consensus of what the whole town wants versus just what a few people want, we can have a better understanding of what the town really wants, and we can move forward towards that.
So let me piggyback what Mike's saying, and this is really to follow up for you, Paul, okay? So I want you to know that we're the staff that's getting the calls, right? So Tammy, myself, James, whoever. Sometimes Tom, I'm sure, gets the calls too.
No, they come and knock on
But-
the door.
I'm gonna knock on your door too. Alright, so here's the thing, okay? And this isn't to downplay solar, cannabis, or subdivisions, but I'm gonna play on all 3 of them real quick, okay? And this isn't about this, you know, projects coming to town. I just want to make it clear. This is a general statement, okay? So, I own 50 acres of farmland here in Berwick. I don't. This is hypothetical, okay? And I decide I'm gonna sell my property, okay? 10 years down the road, right? I'm getting old, I wanna relocate, I'm selling my property. Phil builds a house on my property line, but it's not my property. He buys a house that's already there or builds it, whatever, okay? Dave comes in and he builds next door to Phil. Mike builds next door to them, right? So I have farmland now, right? But what people don't understand, and I have this conversation 16 times a week, and you can ask Tammy, with everybody who wants to build a new house in this town, what does your future look like? People own land behind you. Are you prepared for them to do whatever they want with their land? These are the things that can happen in those zones. We have these conversations, young kids, 20 years old, you know, coming in, oh, I'm buying this house. Okay, great. But you have a farm in your backyard that isn't always going to be a farm, you know? Are you prepared for that? That's the question we're asking. And we're asking because applicant comes in, I then sell my farm. And then I sell it to Tom. And Tom's going to put in a major subdivision because he has the funds to do it. He bought the land, he owns the land. Land
Actually,
use
I put it
says,
in conservation, but this is hypothetical.
actually, you're building a subdivision, and he decides he's going to put a subdivision in, okay? And our land use says he can put a subdivision there, all right? You're going to have the same amount of abutters in here complaining about the subdivision. And then, oh, you know what? He's going to build a commercial cannabis, you know, building on his property, and he's going to sell from a storefront there, and he can because it's on the correct corridor and we're not capped, okay? He can do that. You're going to have the same amount of people in here complaining about it. And then solar farm, he decides, you know what? I'm just going to do solar. I'm just going to do solar. I don't really want to do cannabis. I don't really want to put a subdivision in my backyard. I'm going to do solar. You're going to have just as many people sitting here in the crowd. So the best thing that we can do as a town, after we, you know, figure out what we're doing here, is educate people on what they're buying before they buy it when they come in. And that's what we try to do. We try to explain to people, like, hey, here it is. It's in black and white. These are all the things that can go in your backyard. And I read down the list, and I read the dumb things that can come in your backyard. A funeral home can come in your backyard. Recreation gym can go in your backyard. And like, recreation gym, the R3, yep, can come in your backyard. I read down the list every single time to everybody who's coming in to build unless they're putting in a subdivision for this very reason. It doesn't matter what goes there. It doesn't matter if it's solar, cannabis, or a subdivision, or a recreation gym, or a home off business, or whatever. It doesn't matter. People are upset when they buy a piece of property. They don't think anything's ever gonna go back there. If I bought a house on, I don't know, Workshop Lane here in Berwick, and then somebody came in and put in a subdivision behind me, I'd probably be upset too. You know, if I didn't know the law, I didn't know the land use, I didn't know it could happen. So that's where we're at. It doesn't matter really what goes on that piece of property. We still have the same problem across the board, no matter what it is.
Right, and I commend you for doing that for people who are applying for building permits for new homes. But I just want to trim down the list.
I understand.
That's-
I understand. I'm just saying, it's hard to do because no matter how you trim down that list, it doesn't matter. The same amount of
Oh, yeah,
people are
you're
gonna
gonna
show
have-
up. That's right,
absolutely.
that's all I'm saying.
Absolutely, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
And to piggyback off what Jenny just said about the subdivisions, we had a training today, 2 sessions of it. 2015 Energy Code. They updated everybody on it. State inspector came down and did the presentation. And one of his closing statements is, we're not gonna adopt the 2018 Energy Code for the state of Maine. We're going directly to 2021. Do you wanna know 2 of the things that are in 2021 that have to go into new residences? It is not an option in the new code. It has to be wired for solar and wired for electric vehicles. Not an option.
Yeah.
Well, they've done a good job with their lobbyists,
Well,
looking down the road.
I just wanna, piggyback on what Jen said about that. I'll give you my personal experience, is I live out on Cemetery Road. My family owns 120 acres. Is several years back, we decided we were gonna have it forested. Hired a licensed forester, came in, did the marking, came in, hired a reputable company to come in and do it. State came down, checked everything out. We started cutting the trees, and my neighbors came and started screaming down here because we were cutting our trees. So no matter what you do, people are gonna come down
Oh,
and
yeah,
scream.
there's no doubt about it.
And then, several years back, is a piece of property up the road from me sold, 26 acres. I figured it was gonna be house lots, 15 houses or so be it. I didn't have the money to buy it. No, 2 apartment buildings out where there was no services. I came down to the planning board. Dave was there at the time. I fought it. I came down, presented my case. They said, well, it's allowed, it's allowed, it's allowed. As I said, no, okay, it's allowed. I couldn't stop it. But I worked with them to change the ordinances, so now multiple family houses have to be on the services. So that's the way to do it. People that are really upset about the solar, they should have been down here working with these people, with the first one, with the second one. The reason we're here now is because, it's stepping on somebody else's toes. Is when they did the first one, out on 236. They had people down here fighting that. Out on Hubbard Road.
But only the people that are in the backyards.
Yeah, is.
So we didn't see a whole group of people here, but the 236, there were like 4 or 5. You know what I mean? There was one solar farm that went in, and I don't think any abutters came in for it. The Hubbard Road one, I don't think we saw one. It just,
We saw them at the sidewalk.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they never came in for the public,
No.
you remember.
Yeah.
So it just depends, and like he said,
And, if you're really opposed to it, they should have been down here working the first time, and then they would have been at the stage they are now with the, tighter restrictions. So,
We're meeting about that now, to put more restrictions on it. You
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah.
So we can get it voted for in November, right?
right.
Let's start writing
A moratorium, a cap,
Whatever.
is, however you want to phrase it, is, I've been accused of being a soulless communist and all that stuff, a socialist and all that, but, we live in a capitalist society. We're supposed to have free enterprise, and a lot of these people, a lot of these places, if Pratt and Whitney were coming in and wanting to build a factory there, we'd have people down here saying, yes, 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 yes. You know, so Pratt and Whitney, a solar farm, I'd rather have a solar farm personally. You know, no traffic, no noise, but, you know, so it's all a matter of perspective. It's how you look at things. And as far as the decommissioning costs, I've been doing a lot of thinking about that. And my guess is that with new technologies and things, we're not gonna see decommissioning costs. Is a few years down the road, is these companies are gonna come in and start retrofitting and putting more efficient panels in and upgrading them. And so.
So what happens with the panels?
Where they go?
Take them out of state.
They take them someplace.
Take them to Massachusetts.
And-
Place.
If you wanna use that argument, is we get a lot of, energy out of natural gas. If you wanna start talking about where these solar panels go, let's start talking about the cost of natural gas. It's not in our neighborhood, we're not paying for those costs, but all these natural gases, is you go to the EPA website and you look at ghost wells.
Yeah.
There are over 2 million wells, gas wells, oil wells, that are uncapped, leaking methane everywhere. So if we're gonna start talking about decommissioning solar panels, let's talk about ghost wells. And what are our responsibilities for using the electricity coming from natural gas?
I think the biggest difference there, and I hear your counter, but the biggest difference is it's not in your backyard.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest issue that I'm hearing as a public servant for the town of Berwick. That's what I'm hearing from the townspeople. So I think my concern, you know, I hear the tax revenue piece, and that's great. But what does Berwick look like 10 years from now?
Exactly.
What does Berwick look like 20 years from now?
Yep.
When we have invested, we've gone all in on solar and marijuana. What does our town look like 20 years from now? Because I intend to live and die here. And I know it sounds very morbid, hopefully later than sooner, but.
We have some nice walks up on Cemetery Road.
Well, it's
But I
not-
just want to make sure.
It's not
that-
just gonna be, sorry to interrupt, but it's not only gonna be marijuana, solar, there'll be a next thing that we wanna be proactive about.
Correct.
Right.
And we want
So
to,
how do we get that next thing and divert from the trajectory that we're on, which looks an awful lot, I think, to the general populace of our town, like, wow, we're doing a lot of marijuana stuff and a lot of solar stuff. What is the next industry? What is the next tax revenue producer? And how do we entice that industry to come to our small New England
I know
town?
this is really messed up, but the next thing that's coming to Berwick at a high rate right now is gyms. Workout gyms.
If I may interject, like, I understand the point, like, you know, a few years ago, the question was, do we want to be known as the pot town? That was what everybody, you know, that I talked to was concerned about. What were we going to be known as? And then solar came in, and now it's a question about solar and storage, and there were a bedroom community and not just a business-friendly community. It's like, at a certain point, in my mind, it's not our responsibility as managers of the town, what the town looks like from a business perspective, because the businesses aren't ours. We don't own them, we're not paying for them, we're not running them. I mean, if we want to fund every business in town, we can make the town look like whatever we want to. You know, if we're going to give tax cuts to certain industries and pay out of pocket so they can come here, then we can do that and make the town look like whatever we want. But that's not the kind of town I want to live in. I want to live in a town that's friendly to new businesses, the new industries that want to come here and, you know, and make a home here, have employees that live here. If that happens to be solar, I'm okay with that personally. If it's marijuana, I'm okay with that. And if it's, if it's grocery stores, I'm okay with that too. It's not one thing or the other. It's who wants to plant roots here, who wants to make the businesses here, and it's the problem that I have with the moratorium idea is that it feels very unfriendly to businesses. We put a cap on marijuana. People want us to put a moratorium on solar. And at a certain point, businesses are gonna look at that and be like, well, if we go there, are they gonna be friendly to us? Are they gonna kick us out when there's too many of us? Or, you know, is it gonna be a situation like that? Because we don't give the look to the town that they want. You know, at a certain point, it becomes a slippery slope, and it's important not to actually go down the slippery slope. You know, I supported the cap on marijuana facilities because we had a bunch, and we hadn't fully seen how they were gonna work out, and it was a temporary cap that we would renew, or we would see how things panned out over a year or so. And that, I think, was successful, and we're still, you know, dipping our toes in what we're gonna do next with that. But, you know, 4 solar farms with how big the town is, honestly doesn't feel like that much of an identity change or that big of a imprint compared to 20 plus licenses for marijuana, you know? And we have the Edge opening hopefully this year, you know, portions of that will be open. That will help change our identity too. So you ask what we're gonna look like in 10, 20 years. I would say we're not gonna look like what we look like today, but also we're not gonna look like anything that we all as a group expect. You know, it's gonna be different than what we expect because there's always gonna be something new, always some new industry that's gonna come in, and I think that's a good thing. That's my personal view on that.
So what do we have for a cap on the marijuana, on cannabis?
There's about, it's a cap on conditional use approvals, so it's about, some establishments have 3 conditional uses, it amounts to 15 total. And 3 or 4 of them have 3 each, so that's how you get to.
And that's for medical and recreational
Yep,
and growing,
yep,
so.
storefronts, cultivation facilities.
Not counting home
Right.
caregivers, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, if we have all 4 solar farms, how many acres of solar panels? Do you have any clue on that
Well,
one?
Interesting.
we can't talk about the one being proposed, but I mean, they're not 70 acres.
I think the one on Hubbard was 75 acres.
12.
Or 79 acres.
No, it's like 12 acres.
Yeah, I think that's the big misconception. People are looking at the total lot that's out there and
Yeah, the lots-
saying that's the whole thing, and that's not what the farm is.
Right.
You know, and
Right,
you
the
know,
lot,
and I
the
think
lot
that's
is not
big.
getting, the whole lot's not getting clear cut, it's only certain
Correct.
areas where they're gonna.
Correct.
I talked to a company recently, and they said the maximum size that you could lease for was about 20 acres worth of usable panels, and that was the maximum. So if you had a 100-acre lot, the most you could have was 20 acres worth of panels, and that's only if you could get approved for that much. You know, depending on the land, depending on CMP, depending on the power lines and stuff like that.
So, yeah, the another limited factor for the solar farms is they wanna be with 3-phase power. You know, that limits, you know, Route 4, 236, Route 9, Hubbard Road. Does Hubbard Road go all the way through? I'm not sure.
I think it does. It sounds like Soltage is moving forward.
Yeah,
So-
and it goes partway up Pine Hill Road to Little Harbor Windows, I know that.
It goes up to.
It goes past it.
It's about, I mean, it's
Into New
less
Hampshire.
than
Where?
50
It goes
acres
into
total.
New Hampshire.
That's the way answer.
Yeah.
We have it on Route 4 though.
Right, yeah, you got Route 4,
Three-phase.
Route 4, yeah.
Right.
You know, that's why they don't wanna tie in, that's why they're not gonna be going out to like, you know, Pine Hill Road and Cranberry
Right.
Meadow Road and places like that, because the 3-phase lines aren't out there. So, you know, you talk about changes in Berwick. I've been here 65 years. When I grew up, there were 2,500 people in town. And so I've seen a lot of changes. I haven't liked all of them, but I think overall Berwick's, you know, been moving in a positive direction. I think that, you know, and I have to say that is one of the things that have been driving, you know, the progress in Berwick, the people moving in. You know, look around this table, you know, how many people moved to Berwick, and how many people moved to Berwick because they saw what Berwick was and they liked it. You know, so I think the whole thing about Berwick being perceived as the pot town or the solar town, it's overblown. Is if you look up, you know, now is in Lebanon up 202, you know, it's a whole strew, you know, of storefronts along there. Down in Elliott, you know, they're opening all up there. And when we had these discussions, you know, years ago at our board, is we talked about it, and it's like most other things, is you have a busy corner, busy intersection, you get CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid all fighting there, and eventually some open, some close, and I think that's what we're gonna be seeing. The CAP seems to be working on the cannabis. You know, I haven't heard anybody complaining about it yet, so, you have heard from people.
Well, we get calls every week for
Right.
more.
Yeah.
I mean,
For
I'm
what?
interested in buying this property and this is what I wanna put in.
This is what I wanna
Sorry,
do.
There's no
Yeah.
permits open for it,
Yeah.
but they're not listed. Well, some of them
They
have
are,
multiple
right.
permits and,
yeah.
So
yeah.
when does that change? We're gonna keep it where it is now, no more?
Well, technically,
Marijuana?
we should be having a meeting yearly on discussing the cap. That was when we put that in, one of our quarterly meetings, we're supposed to be talking about that.
So at the same time, when you talk about that, we could talk about, okay, how close to a person's house can this be built? Right? You go to Pond Road, the thing's
Setbacks,
50 feet
yeah.
off the lady's house. So things like that have to change.
Yeah.
It has to be in an area where they're gonna build something on the main road, it should be landscaped, it should be buffered, it should be shade trees out there, whatever, it just has to, that's what's gonna make this place look good.
Right.
In 20 or 30 years.
Right.
It just, to do what we're doing, I think is,
That was a subtle plug for tree farmers, by the way.
you can get one, right? I'm on my way out.
Mark's not subtle about that.
Hey, James, has any of the permitted marijuana establishments, has any of them closed?
They're either on the spectrum of still mobilizing or changing ownership, or on the other side of fully operational. None of them have closed and given up a spot.
Because that was part of the cap, was we saw this huge influx, and we thought, well, if we have way too many, then we're just setting people up for failure, that we're gonna have 30 places for marijuana in town, and there's just not the economy for them all to survive equally, you know?
I don't see how
So,
they do now.
once they're all up and running, you know, and we can see if they're all viable, then that's, you know, where I would say if all the ones that exist are totally viable, they're making cash hand over fist, you know, that's where we say we can let in a few extra. If a few of them close and it's clearly not viable that they all can stay open, then we can lower the cap, you know, and
I don't
just
think
moderate it
that's
as
something
time-
we should get into, Noah. If we're allowing marijuana buildings in, we're allowing marijuana in, who are we gonna say, well, that guy isn't doing good, so we're not gonna allow this to go in?
Right.
This is America. And we shouldn't be doing it that way.
We should just allow it.
It has to be right, everybody.
It should just be allowed at that point with the restrictions, and that's it.
Let me tell you how this goes. And this is just like the way it is. So, and this has happened in more times than I can count in my couple years of just being here in Berwick. But let's just, let's talk about it. So, abutters come in and they complain about solar going in their backyard, or a subdivision going in the backyard, but we're going to talk about solar because this is a true story. This is what happened here in Berwick, okay? The abutters were BS about a solar farm going in their backyard, okay? So they came to the meeting, they fought it, it went in anyway, right? So they complained during the process of it being built a couple times. And then the next time I saw the same abutters, okay, come into town hall or into, our office, Tammy wasn't here then, I was like, how's the solar farm going? And they're like, we don't care about that anymore, we've moved on. And they're like, on to something else. And, there's one guy who wants to build closer to it and, whatever. So I think it's hard when it's not there yet. But I also think that once it's there, they realize that there's no noise. Like, subdivision brings lots of noise. Solar doesn't bring noise, sorry.
Cannabis brings smell, that's.
Brings odor, you know, sometimes.
But we have our ordinance.
I understand,
you know,
but what I'm saying is, like, on like a level playing field, I mean, I get it, but like solar's, you know, quiet and odorless on that, you know?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that bringing in marijuana, bringing in solar, et cetera, you know, you always have the unintended consequences of it. For instance, we have a facility on Route 4, Kind Farm. There was a very bad accident right at the entrance to Kind Farm, and I happen to live near there. Jerry lives near there, and there was a death because they took 3 jaws of life to cut that car apart to get that person out, and they eventually died. There was another incident where the police happened to be checking the ATM across the street, and they noticed that there was some lights flashing when Kind Farm was closed. There was a car in there. They went over to see. Those guys took off. They had broken into Kind Farm, and there was a chase that went through Berwick, South Berwick, Elliott, Kittery, New Hampshire, ended up in Massachusetts, where they arrested these people. So, you know, unintended consequences. We didn't expect all this by saying, yeah, go ahead, put that in. But these are things that we need to consider as, you know, as a community, the public safety. And not to say that, you know, that's the only thing, but, you know, we have our police and first responders that we have to think about here too, because they're in greater danger when you have a cash crop like marijuana. So it's a target. The other thing that happened in that same area, within 100 yards of it, were 2 other vehicle accidents right there within the last 6 weeks, 4-6 weeks. So it is a bad situation, and we need to get at least state traffic people to take a look at it.
It's all a bad situation on Route 4.
Yeah.
All over
You know, when we're sitting there coming in and saying, okay, Kind Farms wants to build this here, we say, yeah, you can build it, but we're gonna have to put you're gonna have to pay for a turn lane here and a turn lane there. If you can't do that, then we're not giving you a permit. I don't know why we can't do that.
Right.
Common sense, why can't we just say no? Or yes?
I think that comes down to us versus the state, right? 'Cause
No, the
that's a
state isn't gonna
road.
care. You're gonna spend money on it,
Yeah.
make a better thing. They don't give a
No,
shit.
Mark and I sat with DOT, you know, a couple years back about Route 4, and, you know, there's a lot of traffic go through there, a lot of accidents, and, you know, is 90% of the problem is driver inattention.
Right.
It's nothing else.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
It's not the road.
That's why there's a rumble strip,
Right,
to break them out of the interaction.
Right, but
so.
to your point about the turning lane, Northeast Federal Credit Union could not put their ATM in unless they paid for,
Right,
Put a turn lane in.
right.
so
What's wrong with that?
it needs to be
Safety.
put in, and the speed limit needs to be dropped from 55 down to something a little slower in that
Yeah,
area.
35.
Well, we can't change the speed
No,
limit. The-
No, we
Those of
can't
us who
change-
live there.
Well, we got state
writing the
reps,
DOT,
we got state
get
reps that
something
can
done.
change the speed limit, that can work for us as a town. They can step up to the plate and do it.
The state road is, you know, we've looked at it, is, we talked about, you know, what could happen along that road to improve it. And the state came back and said, if you guys wanna spend money, go ahead, we'll let you.
Right.
But we're not going to.
Right, but that's lame on us
Right.
for not saying to whoever's building there,
Right.
where's your turn lane?
Right.
Well,
I
that.
mean, Kind Farms is like a freaking grocery store.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
yeah.
So let's play devil's advocate real quick with solar, okay? The con of solar in our town is we're allowing these solar farms to come into our town, but we can't even dispose of the panels at our own local transfer station. We have to leave the state, go to a different state, and get rid of the panels. That is the biggest confusing con that I know of.
So.
It's that way throughout the state.
I understand.
So
But,
we have
you
to,
know.
when we dispose of our household garbage, we bring it to the transfer station, and where does it go?
Well, I think it's gotta be decided,
Out of
if this
state.
is fast, if
Out of state.
it's bad
No,
waste, if it's hazardous waste, then yeah. But if it's not hazardous waste, then what the hell are we, nothing we can do about it, it's not hazardous. But no one said it's hazardous though.
Yes, they have. Yes,
It's
they
been
have.
proven scientifically?
Yes.
Well, it's
Okay.
got cadmium in it.
Well,
Cadmium
is
lead.
if you, after you crush the panels, that's when it becomes hazardous.
Right.
The panels themselves are not hazardous.
That's correct.
You know,
Yep.
it's after you crush it. So I've heard people coming to me and saying, oh, when the rain's on these panels, these heavy metals wash out of it. Well, it doesn't. It's when it's crushed and it gets exposed to
Right.
water.
That's right.
You know, so.
And that's the only scientific way it's been done. It's been
And-
crushed.
and-
It doesn't make,
and again-
runoff, it doesn't have any, nothing comes off it.
And
Correct.
again, going back to what I said earlier about when, new technologies come along and they start upgrading these panels, it's like all the other electronic waste and stuff, is they're discovering ways, they're developing ways to recover all those heavy metals and stuff, because they're precious metals, and we need them. So, they're gonna develop ways to recover all that stuff, I'm sure of it. But then again, if we have to send the panels out of state, like I said, where does our household garbage go?
Out of state.
Where does our demolition garbage go? Out of state.
No, it
Where
goes
do I?
upstate, goes upstate.
No,
Bangor.
no, goes over here.
Waste
Those are
management,
inside
it
it.
depends on what it is.
Yeah.
Different companies bring it different
Right.
spots.
Well, so is our waste goes out of state anyway, so I don't buy that argument either, so. but
That's
it-
the only con I see of solar, but and
My biggest grief with solar, I agree that we should look at how much we want and where we need to put it and what we're doing with it and tighten it up and everything. And my biggest thing is when they put the fences around it and the wildlife can't get through. That's my biggest problem with it.
True.
Is,
They'll have to put some wildlife tunnels in like they do on the highway.
that's
Right?
that's written in our thing
Yeah.
about how.
Well, only small game can actually get through. The bigger game,
Right.
you're not gonna get a deer through that.
well,
Through that fence.
Jump a 6 foot.
I've seen them jump 12 feet over a fence.
they
wanna get in there.
they jump 6 feet over my electric fence to get my corn.
And if you think about the wildlife, especially the larger game, the route a deer takes one season is not gonna be the same route the deer takes the next season.
Right.
They change constantly, so that's not a valid.
Oh, that's the deer that go through my yard every year.
No, those are different deer.
You probably got good acorns around.
That's funny.
So the beef with the larger animals, they're very resilient. It's just like I said, I used to have deer come through my property all the time. I live on the edge of a track. Nobody ever saw them on the track, but I could find footprints every time they came out of my yard and went up the road. The next year they'd come the other side of the house and go down the other road. Never 2 years in a row. So I know that they're more than adaptable to taking it around.
Yeah.
They do it in nature.
It's same as if when the houses go in, they learn. They first they learn all the nice edible plants that you plant around your house, and they'll come and eat those.
But once those are gone, they're
That's
off
for
on
sure.
a different track, they're gonna go to David's house now.
We don't plant hostas around our house anymore.
I got a question. When do you plan on sharing that thing that you guys worked on this week?
Not
on
until
Monday?
after the election for the new, because we don't want to confuse everybody with the new
The
zoning
timing of it.
ordinances that are going into the June election. That's where we need to
Right.
concentrate right now.
Well, we can't, we can see it,
It's not finalized yet.
but I mean,
We're
we
still-
should have a
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah,
the
it'll be
next
on the
meeting.
agenda as soon as I can get it to the agenda.
Yeah, next meeting is gonna be big.
We've got 2 meetings in a row that there's no way I can get it on the agenda unless you plan on being here and everybody brings a bed in.
Well, I mean, I would like to, I would like to
BCM will
see
be
it.
off the air.
Yeah,
I agree with you. I'd like to see it.
You could email them a draft.
Yep.
I would like to
Draft.
see an email,
A draft.
just
Yeah,
a
and-
draft email, like
And
on
the
Monday,
draft
Tuesday.
could change from one day to the next, just so that you know.
Yeah.
Well,
Particularly
if
after we
you
see.
send out a draft email, I'll guarantee you it will change.
Exactly.
And
I'm-
it might
Yeah.
change, but, you know, what you put into it on Monday might change when I have some input, or you have some input, or you have
Right.
some input. We can all compile this input
Mhm.
in there. You know, if we could see something on Monday or Tuesday, we don't have to necessarily put it on the agenda.
Well, that's when I wanted to bring it to you, so it could be an official planning board notification. When it goes out as a draft like this, I can't even say it's gonna be official, it's gonna be something we're thinking about.
It's a draft.
But, yeah, but it's more than a draft, I wanna make it official so that the planning board knows they have to deal with it. If I just send it out and, I get killed on Monday, where's it gonna go?
Well, you're not dying on Monday.
Better not.
You know,
We haven't
I
killed you
don't-
yet, Tammy, so you're still alive.
We'll see about the meeting on
We can
Thursday.
send it to you. And you
That's all I
know,
have.
here's the thing, we should send it out to the planning board and we will, and we'll do that so when we bring it in front of the planning board, we can.
I send out stuff all the time that people are like, what is this?
But I mean, he was working on it with you guys, so he saw.
No, he hasn't seen the final, because we took multiple ones, and Tammy listed which ones from where were going in when,
Okay.
Yeah, but
in
we
the
have,
order.
but we know. I mean,
Okay,
we were.
so I mean, Monday or Tuesday would be great, just to give us an idea of what you're working on. We might
Okay.
have an opinion on it, we
Well, I
might not.
sent it out to them to see if there were any changes that we want before it goes to the rest of the board, so you're not looking at multiple changes. And then if somebody doesn't happen to have the most current one to look at, then we have to backtrack.
How about we do this? How about if you wanna see it, you come in and take a look at it?
Yeah,
And you
just
guys
come
do
in and
that?
read it.
Yeah,
I like it.
And
that's a
then we
good
don't
idea.
have to blast it out. We can,
Mhm.
you can come in, you can take a look, anyone can look at it.
When can we expect to see that?
Whenever you want, come in.
I had a
Monday.
couple points, because it's really economic development related. And I think something we can do as a, boards, one thing I'd be interested in, the town's been very successful in marketing and branding. It's how we got Kennybunk Savings, it's how we got the York Walk-In, it's how we got the brewery. Pinpointing what we want, and then the other side of that is surveying neighborhoods and seeing what they actually want for economic, what would you support coming in next door? Then we can take that material and bring it to these businesses and say, look, neighbors want this type of business next to them. And I think we could supercharge our economic development that way. The other piece, I just wanted to push back a little bit. Regardless of use, Route 4 is a transportation issue, regardless of Kite Farms could have been, Cumberland Farms. And it's still the same issue. They probably would have triggered at the time. We could have pushed back at the time, planning department, and said, they threw in special retail numbers, and we could have said, no, you're going to trip it, and you mandate it. I think Kind Farms is willing to put in the left turn lane. The other part is we're part of a transportation organization with Kittery, Elliott, South Berwick, and York, and Route 4 is up next for a major corridor in-depth study. A lot has been done. Signage, rumble strips, but left turn lanes are needed. There's probably other things we can do to improve the safety.
Speed limit
I'm
has
with
to
you.
go down.
I'm
It's
with you.
55 right past
They
there.
won't, they
It's
won't do
crazy.
it.
The
We talked to them multiple
We
times.
talked to them, brought them up, showed them around.
The last piece I have is Cumberland Farms gets robbed, that credit union gets robbed. So the fact that if we're gonna say we're not gonna allow jewelry stores, we're not gonna allow. I'm just not sure how that. Obviously, we were from the beginning concerned about public safety, and that's part of the reason why we added licensing, because we knew it was gonna add cost to our services.
Right.
Yeah, and
That's good points.
I've spoken to the chief and the captain multiple times about all the establishments, and they said that they have very little interactions with them at all. As they said, almost never have to deal with it. They said the most common thing is when there's a false alarm on the security thing. Is the most common thing there. So is that robbery was the first in the town that I know of.
It wasn't. No.
They robbed the
That was
ATM.
the third time
Well,
there.
the ATM, yeah.
That was the third time at Kind Farms.
It
that
was?
There was a robbery. Yes,
Third time?
third time.
See, I didn't know that either.
I didn't know that.
Nope.
I only heard of one.
Yeah. So
So for other projects,
But they
I'm just,
have had false alarms at Kind Farms. They've had
Excuse
their
me, two.
Security.
One was a false alarm.
It was a security,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
on for about 45 minutes.
Yep.
For other projects and other industry, I assume, and I'm making a broad assumption, do we reach out to other towns within our state and maybe even other towns in other states that have had successes and failures with those industries to get lessons learned? And if we don't, should we? Because I know, so you've got the bookends on solar and marijuana within our own state, where you have towns that are very solar friendly or marijuana friendly, and you have others that are, hey, moratorium, we're not doing it at all. I'm gonna say as a planning board member, I'm pretty naive and had to get smart on a lot of this stuff on my own, right? On my own time. Do we have contacts with, or should we? Can we reach out to our counterparts in other towns, some that are business friendly with these specific businesses and others that are averse to it, and get their lessons learned and have that as we build our base and come up with policy to I don't want to say regulate, but certainly, make good business decisions that are based in fact and not on feeling.
We can. You know,
So how do we do that?
go to South Berwick's website and find out the chairman of the planning board, and they should have his number published, or call the town hall and just ask for his number and give him a call. I mean, I think that's.
I think it'd be good material for us to have to make
Just
business-based decisions.
Just as an
Good
example,
idea.
Phil, I'm meeting tomorrow. There's a monthly meeting with all the town managers in York County. I mean, Jen and Tammy is a great example. They had a regional meeting with developers and code enforcement officers, bringing all. So I mean, that's all there that we could really tap into that. And
I think there'd be a lot of value added.
And when we first started dealing with the cannabis and stuff, is we're working closely with Southern Maine Planning, and I know in their experience with it and everything, so we do reach out, you know.
Just to say this, cannabis is actually Maine's #1 cash crop, and we're only tapping into a small percentage of it as a town.
But I can tell you that we've gotten a lot of calls, James can probably say yes to this too, asking why we allow it in our town and what worked for us with, so we get those calls.
So why aren't we
cannabis.
making those calls?
Right, but I'm just
I
saying
would
we
love to
have-
be better educated on all of these issues and
Yeah.
not just what I can find on the interwebs. I would like to talk
yeah,
to people that have been through this.
9 times out of 10, when I wrote a ordinance amendment, it was we copy and paste it. You change, you take like they did. You take 3 or 4 ordinances you like, and you kind of mash them together, and then you.
I think we've had this discussion
Yeah.
and spitballed some ideas, and it's great. Why reinvent the wheel? But I would like to get smart on the history and successes and failures in other areas within our own state. I think there's a lot of value there that we're not realizing.
I think that you could just draw the line to South Berwick, to the chairman of the South Berwick Town Council,
Good luck.
I don't, I know, good luck, but I don't think that there's anything prohibiting you from doing that as a planning board member.
No.
Nothing.
And
I think that's a good point.
And there are workshops. I'll send them around to the board for planning board, zoning board, and they meet in different areas. Some are by Zoom, and you actually can go to a training session for 2 hours with your peers and talk about the.
Yeah, Maine Municipal Association puts on a lot of those,
What you could also do is you could check neighboring towns' agendas, and when they have something come up on their agenda, you can actually go to their planning board meetings, because
If I
they are
volunteer for
opposite.
anything else, my wife's gonna lose her mind.
Or if they videotape them, you can
Right,
watch them on
right.
your own time, but you can
Yeah.
see how they do business and what they put in their findings and facts,
But I can do a better job keeping everyone. I mean, when I'm in those monthly meetings of just saying, hey, this is what we're seeing coming down the line, because we can see some things coming.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think we all would.
Yeah.
There's just a feeling of, not disconnect, but there's just, I think, a feeling like, I've been on the planning board for 8.5 years.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
I know.
I think you and I have been on the board
Right,
the
right,
longest.
yeah, we came along at the same time.
But there's just a little feeling of, are we doing the right thing? Because we're not really reaching out outside the community and finding out what other communities are doing. You bring up a really good point by talking to South Berwick, Elliott, Kittery, whatever. I think you bring up a really good point with that, because who knows what we're doing, if it's the right thing to do, or, we could be doing something different. So I think it's a good point.
Actually, I talked to the Elliott, town planner, a couple days ago. Had a really great conversation with them, and I mean, they're dealing with marijuana and solar just like we are.
Right. There's many communities I know of in southern Maine that are dealing with the same exact thing that we are.
Let's
If you go to the big,
capitalize
if
on
you
those
go to the big money
relationships.
towns, like
What's that?
Cumberland, go to the big money towns like Cumberland or Yarmouth, those people, they just fight it, they hold them right off.
Right.
And why can't we do that? Is that, is that
Because they
just,
have millionaires and millionaires and
Yeah,
millionaires.
and devil's advocate to that.
Okay,
is
so it's about
Portland.
money.
That are worth
Portland's
billions
one of
and
the
billions
biggest
of
We can
dollars.
always try,
towns.
and you're
We should
right.
try, yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely. We can try.
We don't have
Why?
to.
Why have we put a cap on the number of marijuana farms that we can have, or the number of marijuana dispensaries that we can have?
I don't
Why-
know,
What's that?
I don't know why we did.
Yeah.
You know, that's what a lot of it comes down to is the cost, for the town. A lot of this stuff
Yeah.
is when the attorneys cost us $350 an hour,
Mhm.
it doesn't take long before we
Right.
start running out of budgets.
Right.
So that's why we don't want to jump into anything and end up in a lawsuit. So that I commend you guys for working on this and moving it forward. I think this is something that we're gonna have to keep working on, throughout the whole summer probably, one way or another. So,
Yeah, your land use ordinances, all of the ordinances are fluid. They're
Right.
never, ever cut in stone, and there's not one ordinance that doesn't ever change. You know, and that's, you instill what's going on in the community now, and in 10 years, it could be a totally different community in the way they think, so
Right.
then you change your ordinance again
Yeah.
to be
Well,
that
it-
way.
it's one of the things I was gonna comment on is that, 20 years ago, you almost never had a land use ordinance change, because everything was just, this is the way it was, this is the way it was.
And we're doing it
And
twice a
over the
year.
last 5 years,
Doing it twice a year.
over the last 5 or 6 years, every election, every time we go to ballot, we have land use ordinance
Right.
changes. That's because you guys are constantly working on it, you listen to what's going on, you see what's coming in, you hear what people are saying, and you guys work on it and change it. So, we have more changes to vote on this time, we'll have more in November, we'll have more again next year, I'm
Right,
sure.
Right.
So it's all fluid. We can't turn back the clock, unfortunately.
No.
We have to work with what we have.
And if anybody knows somebody that can foretell the future, we need to hire them.
It's not gonna happen.
Yeah. So sounds like, staff is working on things. Do we need to talk about subdivisions? There's a lot of push in town from people, saying we need to stop subdivisions.
No, I don't.
Well, it's something that, that we're getting pushback on.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure the past, I'd have to double check. I know this was true 2 years ago. This is an unbelievable fact. I might be wrong, but I think it's a good fact. We haven't had any new lots created from major subdivisions in the past couple of years. I mean, they've been all subdivision amendments. There's a bunch that are proposed, there's a bunch that are coming. But our growth rate's been pretty stable at 20 to 30 houses per year, and on a historical trend,
Right.
it's pretty stable from where we've been.
Do we have enough foresight to, as we approve these subdivisions, which, I'm not opposed to at all, but do we have enough foresight and forecasting ability? Case in point, they voted down the improvement for the schools, right? The
Last year. yeah,
right,
yeah.
it got voted down. So as we entice more people to move into Berwick, there's a great amount of overhead with that, with regard to public safety, fire, police, first responders, resources, water, sewer, et cetera, and the school system, which the voters have spoken very loudly that they did not want to, throw that amount of money at, the 3 community school issue. I think we need to have the pulse of that as a board, and the only reason being is if our tax base doesn't support the needs of everybody who lives in this town, we're gonna shoot ourselves in the foot. And I don't know, is there a forecasting mechanism for
Yeah.
us to be able to, there is? okay.
Yeah, well, it's with, the edge is gonna change things, change the trends. What's happening across the country, and especially in Maine, is that as the average household size is decreasing. So it used to be, average household size was 3. Now it's shrinking from 2.5 and under.
It's shrinking?
The average household size is shrinking, yeah.
That's because a lot of millennials can't afford to have kids.
Or are choosing
Talk to my
not
son.
to.
Or opting out, as they say.
We had more kids in the school system when I was in high school than we do now.
That is true.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
And the other
The
thing,
thing that's changed in schooling that we have to keep in mind is as education has changed and evolved, the classroom sizes have decreased. So my old classroom size was 32, and that was in a small school, and you're not going to see a class of 32 students in it anymore. And that's where you look at teacher shortage too, and everything else. And I agree, yes, I mean, with the school budget that was proposed and shot down, but I think there was more than just a upgrade to the schools that was in there. I think there's a lot more fluff, and they went for some high end. I think a lot of people
Wasn't it
didn't
like
like.
$16 million or something? It was
Yeah,
really
it
high.
was. Yeah. So, and you're right. And trust me, when we look at looking at the comp plan and stuff like that, that's definitely looking at those numbers that James says. There's numbers in there. There's forecasts coming, and you can look at it, and that's where. I know some of you guys are tapped out on volunteering, but at least looking at that and pulling it up and seeing where it's at, you can kind of see what's in there. And maybe that's something where we look at, okay, what can we do with certain impact fees or something when something's being developed to kind of put something off to an offside. Maybe that's something we look at too as part of the solution. So just
Well,
a thought.
we don't have impact fees for commercial. We only have it for residential.
yeah, and the impact
They
fees,
don't have it for commercial.
impact fees, we
I'm
can't
just
use
saying.
on the school system because we have the consolidated school system. It can only
Yeah.
be on Berwick things.
And it
So,
seems
right,
like
yeah.
we hold the lion's share of that budget,
Yeah.
which is significant, and I just
And-
want to make sure if there is a mechanism, because I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't have visibility on that. How are we forecasting if we're approving X amount of subdivisions, the ripple effect on that for public safety, schools, and services? I just want to
Well,
make sure we're not setting
that's
ourselves
one
up.
of the things that we've been doing over the last several years is by trying to consolidate more of the development into the core of the town where those services are more readily available, so that's one of the reasons we're doing it. We do still have restrictions in the R3 as far as subdivisions, correct? Where you can only put 3 house lots in a year, so that, kills off all the major subdivisions. Unfortunately, there are people that own lots of lands out there that put a house lot in, and put a house lot in, and put a house lot in.
Yeah, by far the growth is from one house here, here, and here. Subdivisions get a bad rap, but I mean, Steve will tell you, you have to spend tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands on engineering. They get the bad rap, but it's the random house lot here, here, and here that don't
right.
have that.
And going back,
Diamond.
going back to what Jen said, I have 50 acres, geez, I want a new truck, I'll sell a house lot, so
Yeah.
that pops up, those are what we get.
Well, your 50 acres is in conservation now, so you
Right.
can't sell it.
One of the
Well, I
things.
saved one house lot out.
No, you didn't.
One of the things we can do as a town is we collect open space impact fees with each added bedroom. And we can go out with someone has a family farm and the next generation does not want to operate a farm, they're gonna go sell that. But if the town can come in and purchase it, conserve it, turn it into a recreational field, turn it into a farm, that's one of the ways of doing it. Rather than taking people's right, if you have 50 acres, you see that as your retirement, we're gonna come in and say, no, you can't develop it. That goes from a $200,000 lot to a $50,000. We just took
Right.
$150,000 from somebody.
Yeah.
So that's the delicate balance of it all.
Not to open a can of worms, but the next subdivision, like coming down the line for Maine, maybe not Berwick, but Maine, is tiny houses.
Right.
So, we
Yeah.
talked about it today, we talked about how they're,
Accessory dwelling units.
well, okay, but they're tiny homes.
Right.
Well,
And
in the state definition,
don't say it, you're on TV.
Yeah, I've already read it. Yeah. Well,
You can if you want to.
Well, the other thing they're talking about too in Augusta is with the affordable housing is lot sizes and density. But that's something that we already allow mostly, isn't it? No,
For accessory dwelling units, yeah.
right,
There's
right.
just an error with tiny homes, that's what she's gonna say. They left out the word dwelling by mistake on the,
so it's an accessory structure.
Oh, nice.
It
not
is,
nice.
tiny homes, accessory structures, is
Well,
what they call them?
Oh, we think it's a mistake, really, but
I would guess so.
Get in while the getting's good.
we can't fix that mistake right now.
I thought an ADU had to be attached to a primary
It
residence.
does not
Nope.
have to be attached.
No,
It can be a
No, no, I mean, has to be part of
It
that.
just has to be incidental to the, it can't be more than 50% of the main living house.
Yeah.
And tiny homes are not.
Yeah,
Right.
I got one that just showed up in my backyard.
Well, what I'm saying is, you can't just buy a lot and put an ADU on it. That's a primary residence.
well, they have to meet all the subsurface waste and all that.
Yeah,
A
you know,
camper,
so.
and a camper doesn't really meet it. I mean, it really doesn't. There's certain things that you need to be, you need a skylight above your loft. You need your 5 feet of,
There's
Well,
a
space,
there's a lot
there's all
coming
kinds of-
from the legislature that we're gonna have to deal with in
Yeah.
terms of, they're making a big push for affordable housing. There's a lot of things coming our way that,
I mean, I'm a lender, so I understand that
Uh-oh.
we have, we'll have a primary residence, and then you want to put an ADU. You can either have it within that property, or you can have a separate building that's an ADU. But you have to have that primary residence first before you have the accessory unit. You can't just put an accessory unit out on a lot and say that's an ADU.
well, they forgot the word dwelling, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
do they have to have a cement pad and they have the tiny home?
You know,
Tiny homes are on wheels.
I know they are, but so mobile homes are on wheels too. So
Fifth wheels.
they have to have a
but
slab.
those are considered manufactured homes. There's a definition difference.
Here's my
They have
point of
VIN
bringing
numbers.
it up, right? So we're talking about
Yeah.
we're talking about the direction the town's going and how we may, right, forecast what comes down the line next and what we might want to talk about next. Tiny homes should be
Yeah, I
on
think
our
that, yes,
radar.
definitely.
Because before we know it, there's gonna be tiny home subdivisions all over the place. How are people gonna feel like?
I think
you
you're
dri-
right.
You drive up Pine Hill Road and you see a whole tiny home, it looks like a campground. I mean,
I think that'd be
Pine
great, by
Hill
the way.
Kitchen Pot.
like we're in a
You're
tiny
too
homes.
young to see Pine Hill Kitchen Pot.
Listen, I would love to live in
No.
a tiny home. I just don't think my family of 9 could
Steve.
fit in it. If I could do it,
No,
I
you
would.
just need tiny homes. You build a nice lot with like 5 around and.
Just in case my husband's watching, sorry, honey.
Yeah, yeah, you used to have a golf course there. I'll talk to you about it later, yeah.
Anyway,
So that sounds like something we're gonna need to address here really soon.
it's part of your subdivision,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
you wanna talk subdivisions, we gotta talk about them all,
okay.
Well, I shouldn't say there were more. It was comparable. There was just as many manufactured mobile homes that came into Berwick last year as single-family homes, believe it or not. They were cheaper,
Small, it's the mobile home park, yeah.
well, yeah. And they're, building materials were expensive. Manufactured homes were cheaper too.
Well, manufactured is different than mobile, right?
Yeah, but we can.
Because we have that whole big spot that's getting a bunch of those manufactured homes right off Blackberry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. But
Next to the school.
a mobile and a manufactured is just the modern word for a mobile home.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Because
like
they're all on a
various,
chassis
yeah.
and they all have a VIN number.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them mobile.
Those come
There
off
is-
of
a mobile or
there-
manufactured.
There is a difference.
Yeah, there is.
The modular homes that are coming in. even
Modular is
Well,
different.
modular is
than
different,
manufactured.
but
I
manufactured
agree.
mobile are the
Yeah.
same.
Right,
Okay.
Yeah.
right, yeah.
Because they come in double wide.
Yeah, but as a lender, we make a big distinction between a modular home and a manufactured
Right.
home. And,
Yeah, I can
and
imagine.
right now, though, Fannie Mae has a whole big program going to encourage modified manufactured homes, which are basically what's going on on Blackberry Hill,
Right.
where they take the box, they put it down, and then they build around it. They put the garages, they put the peaks on it, and dress it up.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's a
pretty
big
neat.
deal.
I can tell you more and more lenders or mortgage companies now are very, with the COs and with the permits, if it's a modular home, it better say modular and not just single-family home with dimensions.
Mhm.
And if it's a manufactured home, it better not say mobile home, you know?
Yeah.
So there is correct verbiage needed. So,
It ain't a trailer.
Once you take the wheels off.
not for it's really about how to apply for permits.
Is, talk about years ago, Burlington Trailers is out on Hubbard Road, years ago, there was a 2-story trailer.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Yeah, and somebody stacked the trailer on top of another trailer.
Wow.
Where was code enforcement on that one?
That was before code.
I probably wasn't even born
No,
at that time,
no, you were
so
not.
probably wasn't.
No. Sat out there for
Who's the
about,
town manager then, that bald-headed guy way back?
let's see, who's that been?
He was here forever, way back.
Oh, Norbert.
Norbert, yeah,
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 that would have been Norbert Kuchar, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, back then.
Oh, boy, he's a Norbert.
Well, it sounds like we've talked a lot about a lot of different things. Have a lot of things going on, it sounds like. Do we wanna, sit down and do this again soon?
Yes.
We have a quarterly meeting coming up, right?
I don't know, I'll talk to him.
Yeah.
He's the calendar keeper.
Yeah.
I
Right.
get emails and
Yeah.
say, hey, we have something coming up.
Yeah.
I think so. I think at least once a quarter. If we
Yeah.
could do like, the months that have 5, weeks in them.
Yeah.
I think that this
If we're
is-
gonna do that, though, let's put ourselves to task, because this is great,
Yeah,
but if we're gonna do that, if we're gonna meet again, let's have a goal for that next meeting, whether it's, we've reached out to other towns and we've gotten the pros and the cons of whatever the issue is, and we have substantive things to talk about to develop our own policy moving forward, because I mean, this is a great forum, but if there's no
Yeah, we need
fruit
to-
for our labor, then what are we doing here?
Right.
And I think, give ourselves some hard homework, hold ourselves to task, and the next time we come to the meeting, we come with something concrete to discuss with the vision of making it policy or a policy suggestion.
well, one of the things that we talked about earlier was, surveys and things, is what tools do we have to, do a town-wide
So I
survey?
did a survey on,
You know,
we got 400 responses on the transfer station survey in a weekend. So I bet we get 500 for solar and marijuana.
so,
Okay.
is,
We get a lot of people voting when cannabis is on.
Oh, yeah.
so,
Because we're talking about subdivisions also, you should include subdivisions.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say,
So it's
we
fair
need,
to
we need to
everybody.
figure out what we wanna ask,
Yeah.
Yeah, I can whip something together.
Yeah.
We can get it for the next meeting.
I'd
Some
be
sort
willing
of-
to volunteer for that
Okay.
too.
Yeah, and we talk about the next thing coming down, I think we need to start looking hard at tiny homes.
I agree.
Correct.
Yep.
Is,
Get in front of it, so we're not learning
Right.
on the fly like we are with a lot of.
Like-
Right,
we are right now.
every 6 months,
Right.
updating the ordinances
Yeah.
because something bad happened.
Right, yeah, I feel like that, we say that a lot, we're like, oh, God, I forgot about that, okay.
Right.
And we, we're running around with our heads cut off, and,
Yep.
yeah.
So there's no room for, if we talked about the solar farm on Heritage Road, there's no room for them,
You can't discuss that tonight at all.
At all.
can't discuss it at all.
At all,
Nope.
at all.
So what, can you go back, all right, I'll shut my mouth.
Yeah, right.
I'm really trying to keep you out of court.
Yeah, this is a workshop to discuss what we need to do in a general sense. If we want to discuss, a particular thing is, you guys have a meeting on
Next
Thursday, right? Is, what's on the agenda?
The agenda hasn't.
What's
I've
not
got-
on the agenda?
Yeah. Because I've gotta put the tabling on top of the agenda for the 7th, it's gonna be
It's
quite
been a
a.
long day.
So,
So if things haven't been 100% approved in town, at this point, can you adjust them? Without
If
having
they
a,
haven't been.
What'd you say?
If they haven't been
Adjust
approved?
Yeah,
them
if the
how?
owner comes in and says, well, I don't want this, it's too close to me, or I don't want a junkyard next to me, can we right away say, okay, this is what the dimensions gotta be?
No, because
You
you
can-
have to go by the
Yeah.
land use ordinance that.
You have to follow the LUO.
I don't understand why, we're gonna give you a permit if you do this. We don't have to
Because
give,
of our land use ordinance,
so
whatever
that's one of
is
the
in
things that gotta get
effect,
changed.
It's either allowed or not.
it's
period.
correct, it has to be followed
That's why there's amendments that need to be made to.
to the land use ordinance.
You know, that's why, you know, one of the things that, you know, was talked about is, you know, talk about, you know, solar farms being illegal because they weren't mentioned in the land use ordinance. So they weren't illegal, they were unregulated. You know, there's language in there for that type of development, just because it doesn't say it specifically. You know, as long as they followed those things, it was unregulated, it's not illegal. So, now that we have the regulations in place, you know, it like everything, it's like when they come up with a new car, you know, it takes a while to work the bugs out, you know? You know, you gotta go through it and say, oh, well, that didn't work, we need to do this, or that didn't work, we need to do that, so. And that, like I said, that's why every 6 months, we're changing our land use ordinances, you know, because it is a fluid thing.
Well, we can't change them on our own, that has to be voted on, right?
Right.
So we're not
Correct.
changing every 6 months, once a year.
Yeah, and that's,
No,
Well,
twice
Well, we have a
year.
chance to
Two
change it
elections.
twice a year.
Right,
Okay, that's right, too.
November and June
Right,
typically.
right.
But, you know, having said all that, we do have, and do quite often, have conditions of approval that we set up as a planning board, so that certain things are followed and can get monitored
Yeah.
during the construction and operation of the business.
It's
And
just
those
limited to
fall in-
what we can do.
Correct, it's all.
if you are in a
what's
conditional use area.
Right,
Correct.
if it's conditional use, correct.
Yes, and it's all followed by what's in that land use existing when the application came in.
So when
And I
something,
think that's the one thing we have to be very clear and concise with, because I've heard the word, you know, policy thrown around a lot. You know, we can do our homework and we can come up with where things are going, and, you know, and obviously I think, yes, surveying the town and getting the pulse on the town is a huge thing. And I think what people need to understand is that's where we make a recommendation to that ordinance that has to be voted on by the town. We are not changing a policy, you know, and that's where we need to make sure we're very clear about that when we're talking words and how we're talking to things and we're understanding from people. You know, we can gather information, and as we learn more about things, as we adapt and as the world adapts, yes, we're gonna make suggestions to what we think that ordinance is gonna be. The second part is we gotta educate the town why we're making that change, because when it goes to vote, we might think we have it all buttoned down, and it could get voted down in November. And that change goes right back to square one, and what you think you just changed and what we're gonna put on there isn't gonna change a thing. So there's an education piece that we need to make sure that we're doing our part to educate everybody else that's out there with the information we're finding. And then remember, and then the last thing is we need to make sure we are very clear that we are following what is in that LUO. When we have an applicant come, we talk about, how do we get the next businesses in? We got to make it easy for them. We have something in writing. This is what our agreement is with them. And if it goes to a meeting and you're not following that, we're not sticking to that because we're throwing a personal opinion in there or what we might feel, we're not going to get any business coming to town because they're not going to want to deal with it. So that's just something to keep in thought, keep in our mind too.
That is correct, and to piggyback on Mike, also when we do our findings of fact of the planning board or code from the code standpoint, our point of view, when you guys are doing your stuff, you also can't make a findings of fact more stringent on one applicant than you have on the last three. And that's what we as a town need to be careful of. So if I wanted to open a bakery and there's 3 other bakeries in town, but you put a bunch of regulations on my bakery, but not the other 3, that's a problem in this town. And that's kind of what's happening,
well, how do you change it then, by vote?
You change it by looking at old findings of facts
Yeah,
and reviewing it and making sure that you're not holding them to a new standard.
well, we think we would be now.
If it changes our land use ordinance, we can hold them to a different standard. But we
Right.
can't hold an applicant to a new standard that nothing's changed for.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if
We
that
can only hold them
applicant.
to
I
the new
understand
standard.
that, we can't do it,
Yeah.
but we can ask them,
Well,
we can
and
make
so-
your life a lot easier if you put a turn lane in. right?
Well, Attorney
Those
Lane's
are
a little
things-
bit different.
I
That's
s-
life
I see
safety.
it all over the place, they do it all over.
Yeah, I know, I
And
know.
if you've got all these gyms coming in, the latest one that comes in can't be held to any different standard than the other ones based on what's in that ordinance.
We're saying
But the process evolves, and I use solar as an example. So the first solar farm, they went in, they did not, their decommissioning plan did not require a surety bond. And we made that recommendation on the second and the third one. So we did change. So how
But
did
didn't-
we get there? is
Because
what
it
I'm
was
asking.
state law, right? State
No,
law
it
is
wasn't.
surety? It wasn't?
It was not until
Not
Until
yet.
the one?
until
Not yet.
the
Oh,
one
it's
that
not
we
like
shall
that.
not speak, but,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I think they voluntarily
They did.
agreed to do it.
Oh, because they agreed.
Because-
we threw it out
because-
as a hypothetical, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we threw it out, what happens in 25 years, and these solar panels have got to get taken out.
Because I'm smarter on solar today than I was 6 months ago when we were having this discussion. I think we all are, and it's an evolving process, and I think we have to, how do we evolve the process? If we're holding somebody to a standard,
By changing the land use
We
ordinance
change the
going
we have to
forward,
change it.
that's the way it
Okay.
has to go.
All right, all
But I
right.
still think that during the approval process, you could soothe some things a little bit by saying, you know, if you put this in, be a little bit better, people
Would
like
we-
it. And I
would-
don't see anyone complaining about it.
Right.
Would we be within,
Voluntarily
Voluntarily do this, is
Yeah.
what
would
you're
we be
saying.
within
Yeah,
right?
voluntarily do it.
Would we be within the law and within right if another applicant comes in, or before another applicant comes in for solar, we say, hey, we're gonna pump the brakes on solar until we have a punch list, right? For
No,
new,
you
for new
can't.
applicants, you can't do that.
You'd be holding them to a different standard.
Yep.
You
Right.
can't do that.
I see.
Yeah.
All right,
You
wow.
know,
Not
so
until
November
when
you
it
have-
changes.
when the
Interesting.
changes are made. And if it gets shot down in November, then you're right back at square one. Your fifth or sixth solar,
Okay,
comes in front of the planning board. You have to say, okay, these are findings of fact for the last four that were here.
wow.
Now we have to hold them to
So,
that
so
standard.
where does a cap come in on this, James? When you
cap
were
would be-
defining for me what a cap
Well,
was as
cap would
opposed-
be, I mean, if we put in a cap, the language would be, the cap is as of November 8th, 2022.
When
So
it
the
gets-
after
moment,
the election,
moment it's voted in.
as a result of the
No
election.
more. And
Okay.
a cap is, it's not a perfect tool.
Right.
It's one of my favorites, I guess, at this point, because it
It's an easy way.
stopped
It's an
that.
easy
Well,
button.
it
Right.
allows some business of that, but then, it puts a stop to more.
And it would also fall under the same that the marijuana ordinance has. It has a cap of, there are 15 out there now, so if somebody says, no, I don't wanna do it anymore, boom, you're now looking at somebody else taking the place of that one.
Which
So
we
the
did just
three-
add one.
So the 3 solar farms that have been approved, if one of them decides they don't wanna do it anymore because they got bought out by somebody else that wants to raise
Happens all the time.
daisies
Yeah.
on that property, and they're gonna put a daisy farm in instead of a solar farm. So now there's another solar array that could go up because you capped it at whatever number, and it was after the
Right.
8th of November, then you could do it.
What about marijuana? Someone's got a
Same
200-acre piece of property, field, they wanna put a 50-acre marijuana patch in.
There are no,
There's nothing to control that.
yes, there is, because there are only so many permits allowed for marijuana until.
But not field growing it, field growing, it's an agricultural
Uh,
thing, right?
No.
No?
No.
So they can't.
Right, marijuana doesn't fall under that agricultural side
Hemp
of
is
it.
different.
Hemp would.
Correct.
Hemp would.
Right, but hemp is not,
Cannabis.
Yeah, I know.
The hardest part about this is, okay, you put a solar farm on 236, you put a solar farm on Hubbard Road, you put a solar farm on Sophie's Way, you put a solar farm 5 other places in this town. And no two plots of land are alike.
No.
So you could be putting solar farms not in people's yards, backyards, or you could be, and it's all different. So that's what's hard about the findings of fact when the planning board writes them, and it's hard for them to keep it to facts instead of personal opinion, because some of these don't have neighbors, and some of them have a whole bunch of neighbors, and neighbors that agree with it, and neighbors that don't agree with it, and it's hard. It's hard to listen to. It's hard to sit up here and say, oh, nobody wants us to come in, but we have to let it in,
And
And
it's-
that's the
it's-
hardest part. But that's why staff works on fact. We work on fact every day. That's all we work on. Planning board.
Not our emotional side. We have to be able to take and separate that piece of it. It's just like when
Planning
Jenny.
board works on fact
Yeah.
as well.
Yep.
They cannot take their personal opinion and put it into the application. Trust me, there are about 4 or 5 different applications in the last 2 years that would not be approved if we could work on personal opinion.
When
There'd
Jenny gets
probably be
a,
more than that.
when Jenny gets a house application that comes in,
Two.
Michael, please.
there were some designs that come in that it's like, really? You wanna put that design in that location? But we have to because it meets code. It
Just happened.
meets the ordinance.
Just last week, it took me, 4 hours to do a plan review on a new building permit that came in, and it's not because the square footage of the house was out of control. It was the style of the house. I had to do extensive research to see if we, as a town, has the, it was a lot. And it came to be that, yeah, they could put it there, and you guys are all gonna see it, and you're gonna be like, that's what she was talking about, But it's the way it is. It meets our land use, it meets the code, it's going up.
And
You
who are
know?
we to say what goes on someone else's property? If you own a property, you should be able to do what you want within
Based-
those
based
land
on
use
the land
ordinances.
use.
Land use ordinance.
Exactly.
That's right. Yep.
It's.
Well, we're getting on to an hour and a half now. Is this long enough for any meeting?
Yep.
It's not a meeting, it's
Yeah,
a
the
workshop.
Well, I'm sweating so
Talk about
hard, we've
birds
been working
first.
so hard. It sounds like we're gonna be having another meeting here shortly anyway. We're gonna be looking at some issues, it sounds like. I'm sure we'll all be doing a lot of homework, so.
Taking notes.
is,
That's a good notes.
A note taker? Oh, good. Anything anybody else wants to add?
No.
No? Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Good night.